Page 328. I'm talking about a very interesting psychological issue this morning. Page 328, sentence 1. Leah had 4 children. That's the backdrop. Sentence 1. Vater Rachel ki lo yolda liYaakov. She saw she had not given birth for Jacob. Vatakane Rachel bachosa. And Rachel was jealous of her sister. And she said to Yaakov, give me children, and if not, I'm dead. If anybody wants to hear a fascinating interpretation of the whole notion of having children, and she's dead, Rashi learns here. Ask somebody for a copy of last night's class. Today I want to deal with the issue of jealousy. The Torah is telling us our holy mother, Rachel, was a jealous woman. That, King Solomon says, that's like one of the worst traits a person could possibly have. It eats you up like burning coals inside of you. It really needs some type of explanation of, we hold these women up to great esteem. They are our mothers, the mother of the Jewish people. In a way, Sarah and Rivka are the mothers of the fathers of the real Jewish people. I mean, the real family is, we're all like much more of our traits from Rachel and Leah than we do have from Sarah and Rivka. They're actually the mothers of the tribes. And what does it mean she was jealous? Torah says she's jealous. If your wife is jealous, you get plenty upset about her. She gets jealous of somebody else. And Torah says she's jealous. And actually, if you go back to page 327, that Leah had one child, and she has a second child. The Tyra owed, she becomes pregnant with the second child, Vateled Bain, and she gives birth to a son, Batomer. She said, Ki Shom Hashem, Ki Snu Anochi. Hashem heard that I was hated, and he gave me this child, and she called him Shimon. Last night I went through a very interesting interpretation of the whole idea of being hated, but there's Rishonim who say she was hated by Rachel. Jealousy brings the hatred. So not only was she jealous, she got to the point that we're talking about a person with that. It's hard to, on one hand, have a tremendous admiration when the Torah says she was jealous, and the Rishonim say, some of them, say that Kisnua, not that Jacob hated her, but she was hated by Rachel. It's not clear from the text, which is, and this is in the Rabbeinu Menachem one, talking about 700-800 years ago, the greatest commentators on the Bible. So what's the idea? Hatred and jealousy?
We can learn that jealousy is an evil thing, but there's one case where it's good, and that's fellow Torah scholars. If somebody knows more than
well, we'll come to it, but that has nothing to do with this, I don't think.
there's a positive to jealousy.
Yeah. I'd like to suggest a very interesting thing. We find somebody else is jealous. The Almighty is jealous. When Jewish people do idolatry, it says, Keil Kana, a jealous God. God have psychological and emotional problems too? God is jealous. I can understand being angry, you violate, you want to. What do you mean jealous? The Torah says jealous. I think in English they don't like to say a jealous God, a zealous God, whatever. Anybody know there's jealousy and zealousy, I'm not sure. But what does it mean God is jealous? It's like the Torah tells them, it says, Ki Keil Kana. God is jealous. What does it mean? If jealousy is such a sickness, how could jealousy be a something, an attribute we find by God. Again, the attributes of God is not really discussing who he is, but discussing how he's acting. But nevertheless, we are obligated in the laws of imitating his ways to act the way he acts. In order to begin, I'd like to begin with a very interesting Talmudic statement. The Talmud says a person is jealous, can be jealous of anybody, except for two exceptions: his children and his student. And I'm going to tell you that I've been in many family dynamic situations where children feel their parents are jealous of them. I don't know if anybody here felt it, but don't be sure that your children didn't feel it. The Torah says you don't feel jealousy, not of a student. Now, it would sound like so first I thought, well, maybe the kids need a lot of psychological help. They got serious problems. Then I remembered the following chazal. Listen to what chazal, our sages, say. On the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, he died on a Shabbos. On that Shabbos, God appointed the next leader of the Jewish people. And in fact, the next leader of the Jewish people was Joshua. And on the last day of Moshe's life, Yehoshua was the leader of the Jewish people. And Moshe went over to ask Yehoshua, what did God tell you? When you were alive, when you were a leader, did I ever ask you that question? And this is recited, and this is a chazal, our sages tell us this. And Moshe Rabbeinu said the following thing: it is better to die 100 times than to feel a tinge of jealousy. Now look who we're talking about. Moshe is jealous of who? Yehoshua, his student. The perfect example of student, the Torah tells us, was Yehoshua. When we talk about the ideal Rebbe-Talmud relationship, the example, our sages say, is Moshe and Yehoshua. The Torah talks about the great student Yehoshua. In fact, that's why he merited to be even though Moshe had children, he merited to be the next leader of the Jewish people because he was a student. And even more than that, our sages say that Moshe Rabbeinu predicted certain bad things happening. They said they didn't happen. And then the sages say they didn't happen in Moshe's lifetime. He said, after I'm going to die. But they didn't happen in Yeshua's time, because as long as Yeshua was alive, it was like Moshe was alive. So we want to understand the level of relationship and the perfection of Rebbe's student, that as long as Yeshua was alive was like Moshe was alive, and yet Moshe says himself he's jealous. He felt that tinge of jealousy and said, I'd rather die 100 times than have one tinge of jealousy. Moshe Rabbeinu's character was modesty. Modesty means I give everybody their space. What does it mean? How could Moshe Rabbeinu feel jealousy? Well, there's two questions. First of all, having the prince of character traits he embodies makes it a problem, but makes it even the greater problem is that the Talmud says a person is not jealous of his student. So how could Moshe Rabbeinu be jealous of his student? I'd like to suggest a very interesting thing. What is the feeling of jealousy? You have to define jealousy. What do you mean I'm jealous of somebody else?
Envy.
Yeah, but I mean, what is that feeling, envy? What do I want? What is there anything I want? So actually, the root word of jealousy, the root in Hebrew, is the root of the word kina is kuf nun. Two letters, kuf and a nun. That word is, that root appears in many words. It appears in the word, for example, acquisition, kinyan, kona, which means the root of jealousy is my desire to acquire. I want something that you have. Hebrew is an incredible language. It's actually not a big language in the sense of, I mean, English has, 400,000 words, even non-technical words. Hebrew has a much smaller lexicon, But since it's God's language, the root of words give you a whole insight and understanding that you don't need 10 different words to explain. It tells you the heart of the issue. So the heart of the issue of jealousy is not, it's describing an emotion, but that emotion has in it a sense of possessiveness. I want to possess something. It's mine. I want to possess it. That is a sick feeling. A person, it rips a person apart. That's if I want to possess if I want to possess what you have. What about if you are dispossessing me and I want to get what is rightfully mine? That is not only not wrong, that's a healthy feeling, and more than that, you should have the feeling. I should never want what's not mine, but I should jealously safeguard what is mine. Let's get what the psychology of that is. And how do I know this? We have a mitzvah in the Torah to be jealous sometimes. If I suspect my wife of infidelity, I told her not to, and she still went into a private seclusion with somebody that I told her, it's getting a little too close. So there's a mitzvah that I should bring her to the Kohen to try and figure out, should she just go against what I said, or did she really break the whole marriage relationship by having relations with him? So the Torah says, "V'kine esishto." He should be jealous of his wife, and the Gemara said it's a mitzvah to be jealous. I mean, there's nothing good about having unhealthy feelings. I don't care if you call it mitzvahs or not. If you're eating yourself up alive, it's sick. The difference is like this. My wife is properly, we have a relationship. I don't want, if I want somebody else's wife, that's sick. I mean, that's an unhealthy feeling. I don't say people don't have that, but they're doing themselves enormous harm. In fact, the Mishnah says, Kina takes you out of the world. Like your life is not a life. You almost can't live with yourself. That's the way the Mishnah describes. Shlomo says it burns you up. The Mishnah says your life is not a life. You're like, you can't live with yourself. That's if I want what's yours. But to guard what's mine, protect what's mine, it's a mitzvah to protect what's mine. And what's the reason? Why should it be a mitzvah? If I don't guard what's mine, then I don't feel what I have is uniquely suited to me. Okay, took my wife, I'll find a different girl. So I don't understand that my wife and I have something unique that's really, she's the right woman for me. If I don't really feel my wife is the right woman for me, then my whole life I'll be thinking maybe somebody else's wife is right for me. Maybe I'll tempt. Maybe someone who's not or another woman is right for me, and I'll constantly be trying to find that out. And that's a very unhealthy situation. When a person understands that something is uniquely suited to him, he doesn't want anything else. So the healthiest thing in the world is to know that which is mine is what is right for me, suited for me, and something else might be more spectacular. I don't know. I hear there's Armani suits that are $10,000. I mean, I'd like a $10,000 suit, but I'll tell you one thing: I wouldn't want a $10,000 suit that's 2 sizes too small for me, or 2 sizes too big for me. I'd rather get something off the rack in Sears than have a suit that's 3 sizes too big for me. If I understand that it's not suited for me, then I don't want it. The only way I can understand that something's not suited for me is if I understand what I have is perfectly suited for me. Which means the ultimate healthy feeling is to understand in relationships, especially with the wife, she's special for me. There might be a woman over there that's more beautiful, smart, or whatever, but this is the one that's perfect for me. And if I feel that way, then I will not be involved in anybody else. If I don't feel that, I don't guard what's mine, then I don't feel it's particularly suited for me. So even when I'm married, maybe there's this one and that one and the other one. It's a mitzvah to guard, to understand what's yours is uniquely suited for you. It's a terrible sickness to want to possess something that doesn't belong to you. That's really and it's many things like that. You know, even more money. If you can't handle money and all of a sudden someone drops you $100 million, you're going to become arrogant. You're going to become not a mensch. And we see it every day. Nice people, when they got an inordinate amount of money, were no longer nice. They forgot about returning phone calls. They forgot about speaking respectfully to you. If you can't handle it, if God gave me this, then this is what is right for me. And if I have more, a lot of those terrible qualities and character traits could come to me too. If I have less, maybe I can go around feeling deprived. It's terrible. A person has to understand that what they have is unique for them, and they should hold on to what they have. You should be very careful to respect what you have, that this is what's right for you, and therefore not to want anybody else. So wanting what's not mine is a sickness. Wanting what is mine is healthy. A person is not jealous of his children. And I'm telling you, I've been sitting in places where the kids swore the mother's jealous of her, the father's jealous. And I finally figured out, at least in the cases that I dealt with, and I know this is what Chazal, I'm going to see where the sages say what I'm about to say, is the child is smarter, more beautiful, has a bigger business. Parents not only can handle that, they take pride in that. But what about if the father builds up a business, he's still healthy, likes going into work, the kids think they can do it better, and they push him out of his business? Yeah, he's still getting a return on the business. I don't mean they're going to steal his money, but they start running the business. He wants to run. He wants to go in there. He built it. When you displace your father, he's jealous of you. When you take away from something that's rightfully of a person's, he should be jealous. You're taking away what's rightfully his. As long as he's capable of running it, then it's his. And he should be, and that's what makes him feel good, and that's what was his. You don't when the children push a parent out, and what they're doing is taking away what was rightfully his, and he will be jealous. And he should be jealous. Because if not, then his whole life, when you have a business and you have a position, whatever, it's a position, and well, maybe this isn't right for me, then I want your position. I want, what's going on in Baskin Palmer. Yeah, two brilliant doctors, each one want the other ones, or whatever the dynamics. If you're not comfortable in your own shoes, if I am exactly the expert in the field that I want to be, and somebody else's, and I try and get his, or he tries to take away from me, that's very unhealthy. Person, if you feel good about you, let him be great. He's not diminishing me. Moshe Rabbeinu had the greatest student, Yeshua, and there's no jealousy until he pushed him out of the chair. On the last day of his life, God replaced Moshe Rabbeinu with Yeshua. He pushed him out. And he says, it is better to die 100 times. He felt the tinge of jealousy, not because of Yeshua's extraordinary accomplishments. That's wonderful. Had he been greater and he was going to take the Jews into the Jewish people, into Israel, something that was Moshe's whole dream. Had he, let's say, not died and seen that, he wouldn't have been jealous at all. He couldn't do it. Somebody else does it. He had a greater accomplishment than him. But the job that I had, and I'm capable of doing it, and I'm being displaced, even Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's not a character flaw. It's the opposite. When you know what's yours and you hold on to what's yours, then you are a healthy person, because then you don't want what's not yours. And until you come to absolute terms of the position, the job, the skills you have are perfectly suited for you, then you will be healthy, and you will not want, and your eyes won't constantly be roving. Maybe I should be that. I should get a better job. I should get more recognition. I should get a bigger job. I want somebody else's wife. The main thing in life is to learn how and to understand why what I have is totally suited for me. Rachel here is jealous of Leah. Our question was, that's a very unhealthy thing to be jealous. So there's actually two explanations. One of them is obvious. Then we'll take a look at how Rashi says over here. We'll see even another insight. Who was Jacob supposed to be married to? Who did he work for 7 years? Who did he feel this unique connection to? Who did he feel this strong bond to and this great feeling of love? Rachel. So by very nature, Leah was taking away something that Rachel had every right to feel that was properly hers. But now goes more. Let's go back to the sentence right before this. Sentence 35. The sentence of Rachel being jealous is preceded by the following sentence. And Leah became pregnant again, and she gave birth to a son. And this is Leah talking. This time I will thank God. And therefore she called him Yehuda, which is the language of thanks. And then she stopped having children anymore. Right? 328. This is the sentence the next sentence is, and Rachel saw she didn't, and she was jealous. How many children does she have now? Yehuda? 4. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Look at Rashi. This time I will give thanks because I took more than my share. Rashi says it earlier on. You take that. Rashi explained why it is not until this time after the birth of the 4th child that Leah thanks, because Rashi brings earlier on, our mothers were prophetesses, and they knew that there's going to be 12 children. They know there's 4 wives, so how much should each one have? 3. The day she has 4, then Rachel understands that she's being diminished. She's being diminished. And not only that, this was the husband that was really hers. And now she has a diminished relationship with him because she's not going to have 4. She's not probably even going to have 3. And the others have, there's 2 more, so figure probably they're going to get 3 and 3. And I'm only going to wind up with 2. I'm going to wind up with 2. And therefore she felt diminished. Therefore she was jealous. So there's 2 reasons for her jealousy. Number 1, Leah took away what was hers. And number 2, not only did she take away what was hers, even though she still has Yaakov, but she's diminished in what her share would have been. Her share should have been 3, and now she's going to have 2. When you diminish when you take away from somebody what's rightfully theirs, it's healthy to be jealous. Because then she had a purpose. She knew what she was supposed to do in life, and all of a sudden, she has a diminished existence. God himself, this comes out a fascinating thing. God himself, put in the allegorical terms that the Talmud uses, and the scriptures actually say, we're married to God. The Jewish people have a unique relationship with God that none of the other nations had. Sinai was only secondary giving us the Torah. The real synodic event was a marriage between God and Israel. The giving the Torah was, I marry you, I give you all my most precious possessions. But Sinai was a marriage. It's described in the following way, that God went there before the Jewish people, and Rashi says like a chassan goes up to the chuppah before the kala. It was a marriage. Sinai was a marriage and to the Jewish people, and God feels we're totally suited for him. And what happens is now this idol, we're sort of trying to, avodas is like getting married to the idol. Being married to the idol is diminishing God's, taking away from God what's rightfully his, us. That's what jealousy means. When you take away from somebody what's rightfully theirs, jealousy is not only not an illness, jealousy is the only healthy response to that. Because I want what's rightfully mine. The only way a healthy person can live in the world is because he knows what's rightfully his. And he wants to hold on to what's rightfully his, because then he doesn't want somebody else's job, somebody else's fame, somebody else's fortune. He wants what's his. And when someone takes away what's his, on that a person has not only a right but a mitzvah to be jealous. That's literally a mitzvah. Someone takes away your wife or is trying to, it's a mitzvah to be jealous, because we need to feel in our relationships how this is the one that's absolutely right for me. And if it's absolutely right for me, someone takes away, he's diminishing my existence. And if we don't feel what we have is right for us, all our lives we're searching for more money, more fame, more prestige, more power, and that is an ill person. Then we are actually tremendously jealous. A jealous person doesn't have a life. The only way to avoid being jealous is to be absolutely secure and certain that what you have is right for you. A little turning around the whole notion. It is so important to feel what you have is literally right for you. Yeah, you could have a bigger hospital. You could have a bigger practice. You could be a bigger rabbi. You could have a bigger business. You could have other skill sets. But if this is who you are, when you come to terms of who you are, you don't want what somebody else is. Let me tell you, there's nothing greater to do this for our children. You want that there shouldn't be sibling rivalry, is you have to give each child the feeling of who they are and what they are capable of doing. If you give a child, you're the academic in the family. The other one is the kindness in the family. And even, within academic, there can be 35 different, abilities in academia also. And you're the one who has talents. You're a world-class singer. Not only are the kids not jealous of each other, they take pride in each other's accomplishments. It's only when I don't know who I am, and my sister's getting known for this, that should be me. But if I know that's not who I am, that's what she is, I take pride in her. She's my sister and she did this. The only way not as a human being to be jealous is to know who you are, and the only thing that parents can do, that the kids shouldn't be at each other's throats, is giving children a sense of who their identity and what their abilities are. As long as you come to terms with who you are, you don't want to be somebody else. You really don't want to be somebody else, because it doesn't suit you. It doesn't make you feel good. Yeah, you'll get. Is there anything worse than getting praised for what you're not? That people will praise you, give you covered for what you're not. That's the worst thing. That's the worst thing. It's totally empty. We have to become comfortable with who we are. And I think that's the greatest obligation of parents. It takes focus. You got to think about that, and you got to focus on the child. Who are they? If you don't think about that, you're not going to really know who your child is. And it takes a lot of focus. It's not a question of intelligence as much as it is as concern and focus to that. I know my job is to understand what their abilities are. And most of us don't do that, because we figure out what we'd like our children to be. I want my child to be, the next Gadol Hador in our circles. I want my child to be the next greatest doctor. And then each of my children have to fit into my dream. And all I've done is created a sibling rivalry that has no bounds, and they're not going to get along. You'll be a great doctor. You could be a great lawyer. You can be a great rabbi. You can be a great accountant. You can be just a very kind person that anytime anybody needs a favor, you're there. You have a great gift for singing. Every child has some unique ability. We have to put them in touch with their unique ability. When I'm in touch with my unique ability, it doesn't bother me in the slightest what somebody else is, because I feel good about myself. The only way to avoid jealousy is to know who I am and to jealously safeguard what I am. I shouldn't let anybody take, because that's the only thing that's ever going to make me feel good. The only thing that's ever going to make me feel good is the thing that I am capable of doing. Nothing else will make me feel good. Or the relationships that I have that are suited for me. This is the wife that's right for me. If I understand that, yeah, there's movie stars out there, but so what? That's not for me. There may even be more kind people, but that's not for me. This is the one that's absolutely for me. That's the only way to avoid jealousy, is to become secure in who we have, and and understand why this relationship is unique for me. So we start off thinking it's a huge shortcoming. Torah is describing here a great virtue. She understood her role as Yaakov's wife, and when someone is trying to push her out and take her out of the picture, she wants to safeguard that. But if you don't safeguard that, then she's already will have an unhappy, miserable life. I should have a great Shabbos.